Hi everyone, my name is Aarti and I'm from ConnectFor. We will begin now. Um, I have myself with me, my colleague Kritika. On behalf of the ConnectFor team, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in into the webinar, where we hope to identify and discuss some tough and unaddressed yet unaddressed questions from the perspective of CSR. Before we begin, I would like to remind all the participants to be on mute for the session to avoid any kind of background noise to interfere with the ongoing session. However, if there is any questions that you need to ask our speakers, the chat section is available to you. We will be doing a quick Q&A at the end of the session. However, if any of these of your questions remain unanswered, please feel free to add it to the feedback form that we will be sharing, uh, and we will address it and revert to you offline. Also, as many of you all might be aware, ConnectFor is a volunteering platform where we match volunteers to different NGOs based on their time and skill preference. So volunteer and uh, vo- we specially curate customized volunteering engagements for both individuals and corporate organizations, keeping in mind the preferences of all stakeholders. We have over 450 plus NGO partners across India and more than 20,000 volunteers on our platform. We work across nine cost verticals: environment, community development, education, just to name a few. Moving on, we truly appreciate that the corporate organizations are looking ahead at a brighter future in the fight against COVID with the help of their CSR and COVID relief programs. While they have the willingness to do it, they need assistance to smoothly transition to the dynamic trends that are grappling uh, employ volunteers in the social space. In India, mandatory CSR has encouraged companies to look beyond financial performance and equally emphasize on social and environmental responsibilities. This mandate has evolved over the past 7 years, guiding the companies to strategically create a social impact. Through this webinar, we aim to discuss some of these questions that are yet to be unanswered, and through the perspective of CSR and volunteering. Moving ahead, I would like to introduce to you all our panel of speakers present with us today. We have Ashwini Saxena with us, who has over 30 years of experience across the range of sectors, PPPs, skill development, etc., across India and Africa. Currently, he is the CEO of JSW Foundation. We have Ripudaman Boparai, who is a corporate social responsibility and diversity inclusion professional with over 8 years of experience, presently responsible for leading the CSR and the D&I function of JLL India. Next, we have with us Rohit Bahadur, who comes with over 25 years of experience in advising clients on governance related matters, including project audits, CSR advisory, pre grant and post grant assessments, partner evaluations, fundraising advisory, and impact studies. Rohit has set up the not for profit and CSR advisory vertical as a separate business unit within Grant Thornton for 6 years ago. Lastly, we have Vijaya Balaji. She is the CEO and Managing Director at Toolbox India Foundation, and she's also the founder of Social Lens Consulting, and is amongst the pioneers of advising uh, non-for-profits on organization development and strengthening requirements. Thank you, firstly, to all the speakers for joining us today. Hello.
Yes,
Hi,
Aarti, we can
Rikudaman.
hear.
Hi, Ashwini.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction.
To begin with the first question, let's dive right into the discussion right now. So the first question of today's discussion will be: Can hours an employee spend on volunteering be quantified monetarily, valued against the required CSR spend? So, Rikudaman, would you like to begin with answering this question?
Thank you, Aarti. Thank you for that question. So I think the hours spent by the volunteers can be and cannot be quantified. In my perspective, it purely depends on the kind of project in which the employees are being engaged. No doubt, as per the CSR rules shared by MCA, the organizations can include the salary of the CSR staff as a CSR spend, but it has to be included under the admin overhead, which cannot exceed 5% of the total CSR expenditure. But it also allows to include the volunteer salary expenses, which can be factored in terms of a complete project or a program cost.
Hmm.
But I think it is very important for an organization to understand what are they claiming as a CSR spend and what it cannot be claimed as a CSR spend. Because in terms of an employee volunteering programs, there can be different types of initiatives. It can be one-off activities, and then can be a long-term projects which engages the employees and train them to execute that project. And those projects, actually, the outcome of those projects depends on the intervention of those employees. So, in that particular scenario where the outcome is purely dependent on the intervention of the volunteers, I feel it's truly justified to claim that volunteer expense as a CSR expense. But yeah, so I think it's a very fine line, and we need to be mindful of how we are taking it ahead. And a lot of organizations have different framework towards employee volunteering. A few of them keep employee volunteering very separate from the CSR, and I know few of them. And but these days, I think everybody is trying to do their best in whatever is good for the society, and it's best for the society. So I feel where the impact is more and can be measurable should be included into CSR. And where you think is one-off activity where it's just purely employee engagement and you're just getting that fun element with the beneficiaries, we should just step away and not include that volunteer time into the CSR spend. So that's my view here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Rohit, would you like to give your perspective to this? Rohit, you're on mute.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, in a sense, it's employee volunteering is difficult to measure, and as my esteemed speaker mentioned, there are different types of volunteering. You could have a one-time volunteering, or you could have a long-term kind of a capacity building kind of volunteering sort of program. However, uh, um, uh, when you look at CSR per se, I think one needs to see what the rules actually say, and one also needs to look at precedents. Largely speaking, I agree, that some part of employee volunteering can be taken as CSR. However, if you look at the rules in India per se, while it in 2014 they started off including employee or allowing for this monetization. In 2016, there were a listing of FAQs where it was specifically excluded. So largely speaking, in my experience of advising companies, whenever there is a gray area, many companies actually keep away from the inclusion. So it's like donating your own products or a shared value project, something which is in a gray zone. Many companies would like to keep away from actually including, and I also feel that at a maximum, it can be included in that 5% as capacity building. If the program is structured like that, but I really haven't found too many companies who've actually gone ahead and done that quantification and included it in their annual reports.
Ashwini, Vijaya, would you like to add on to Rikudaman and Rohit's perspective?
From JSW's perspective, I can tell you we do capture and quantify the work, but we don't claim it as a CSR initiative. And I think the reason is very simple. We do get into this discussion many a number of times whether this qualifies as CSR or not. Uh, I would like to take this question a little bit further than that. That why is it so important that anything and everything that you do should be getting captured somewhere as your cost or as your expenditure and should be accounted for? Because at the end of the day, when people are, because let's not look at volunteerism only from the lens of whether it qualifies within CSR expenditure or not. Let's also look at what are the values that you derive by getting volunteering activities done. And if those values are synonymous and synchronous with the value system that your organization seems to possess, and that it also gives that feel good factor to your employees, which incidentally I'm sure there must be a lot of HR experts sitting here, which incidentally happens to be one of the most important factors when people decide about working with a company or not. I think this takes this whole discussion to a different level, that whether it doesn't get captured as a cost or as an expenditure in CSR or not, the fact that you are demonstrating your ability as a socially responsible corporate citizen, those who are constituents of that entity are also demonstrating their responsibility towards the society and actually feel better about it by doing so. So I've got lots of examples from my organization. At a time I'll talk about them.
Thank you so much. Uh, with, so moving ahead, the second question is towards Ashwini. Uh, so, how will you ensure that the time spent on volunteering happens during work hours and is integrated into one's KRAs? So, would you like to answer that question?
Uh, okay. See, one thing is, we always believe that people should be linked to volunteering opportunities based on what they're really passionate about. And I think you just mentioned briefly at the beginning, or I think Ritu the one talked about it, that there should be some feel good factor or some fun factor, attached to volunteering. That's what makes it so exciting. So I think, so from that perspective, what we have done is, we have defined a number of programs where we believe there is an opportunity for people to volunteer. So, for example, there is a malnutrition program very close to Bombay, our headquarters, from where people can just go during the day and they can come back. So, on any of the working Saturdays, uh, people are kind of, it's a kind of an internal competition amongst different teams who would like to go and do what, and people get involved in not just the implementation of the program, but also in terms of going and talking to the community to seek their perspective. So if the CSR team has done an implementation of the program, they should not go around taking a feedback from the community whether they find the program useful or not useful. So volunteering is not just about doing some activity. It is sometimes also about people going and taking feedback from the community and coming back and sharing, the insights to us that this is something which is happening very good and this is something which is not happening good. So in a sense, we get some kind of I would say, monitoring feedback also. And then there are some programs which have a lot of fun element around that. So for example, we do a lot of mangrove restoration work. So the entire port team finds it a fun day. If on any working day, they would all put on their gum boots and their safety equipment, etc., and everybody would like to get a little dirty by doing the transplantation of mangroves inside the marshy areas around the seacoast. So it's great fun. Similarly, school children from our own Jindal Vidya Mandirs, they are picked up. People from our community are picked up. We recently did some, I would say, sprucing up of the Vasin railway station. So what we did is we picked up all these school children and the people from our plant. Uh, JSW is also incidentally into paint manufacturing, so we took our own paints and we went and we kind of contributed by painting the entire railway station afresh. So fun factor, devoting at least one Saturday per month. I think those are the kind of things that we're doing. But when it comes to actually, as I said, the philosophy is why should we be reporting it as a CSR expenditure or as a CSR activity? It's more of I would say an HR enrichment activity. That's the lens with which we have been working on it. And as far as integrating into KRAs, certainly it can be done in a sense that as people move in the ladders, we always rate them or assess them for the fact that whether they've been able to build capacities of people down the line or not. So in terms of whether they are being able to demonstrate that empathy, that managerial capability, whether they are sharing it with their own internal stakeholders, internal team members, or whether they are being able to do it with the communities, I think that is something which can certainly be integrated. And for a specific team, between one team and the other, you can always create a sense of competition and actually use a 360-degree approach. So if 5 people from the team have gone and done in fact, we've done it not, I would say, in a very methodical manner, but for example, a 6-member team has gone to do some, hand washing stations being established at one of the Anganwadi centers in Palghar, where we do a lot of malnutrition work. How each one of them behaved, how each one of them learned something or unlearned something new. I think that gets captured in a candid discussion after the event is over, after the field visit is over, and I think it all adds up to the KRA somewhere or the other, because somebody would be reporting to somebody, and I think that gets captured into some of their behavioral patterns. So in that sense, certainly it can be built into the KRAs. In our country, I think we've not been capturing it primarily for one of the reasons, as I said, that we look at it more from a human enrichment point of view. But certainly it can be captured. Should not be an issue at all.
Thank you so much, Ashwini, for giving your thought to this question. Dipudaman, would you like to add to this? What are you all doing at GLL uh, right
Yeah,
now?
sure, Aarti. Yes. In general, we have kind of have a very separate employee volunteering program, and of course, we don't claim that as a CSR initiative or a CSR spend. But of course, we link it to the focus areas where we're focusing on. So it need not to be very out of what we are doing as an organization. It will be somewhere within the focus area which GLL is focusing on. And from the perspective of including it to KRA, I have a very different perspective here. I think putting it to KRA might change the whole concept of volunteering, how it was started. No doubt we are progressing towards it, and a lot of organizations are getting those, implementing the CSR as a goal, or participating in the employer volunteering as one of the soft goals in the KRA. But I feel we should give them an open slate. We should not put any goals or any kind of demarcation where that, okay, you need to volunteer and then that's how you will get an add-on plus 10 or plus 20 to it. It should be purely volunteering and it should come from inside. How we can motivate people to participate is giving them that much of opportunities, because everybody has a different cause which they want to focus upon. And in an organization, you need not be able to fulfill everybody's cause, but try to have that soft corner for the employees who actually come back to you and say, okay, this is what I want to focus upon. Can you help me on that? So I feel in my career, I have got a lot of requests from the volunteers. Thankfully, I have been around people who come back to me, say, okay, this is what I want to do now. Can you just help me? So I say, okay, within the organization, perspective, I can help you with that much. But yeah, on a personal front, if you want to go out and step out and do something, I'm absolutely fine and I'll help you in whatever way I can. So I think that sense of motivation when an employee gets, that employees come back and ensures that the person includes themselves in the volunteering activities being hosted by the organization also. So it's very important to give that push to the employees by giving them that much ample of opportunities to volunteer across. So yeah, that's my take on it. And again, on the whether it should be included in the office hours or it should be outside, I think it doesn't matter how the employees are spending their time or the volunteers. But yeah, we in an organization with JLL, we always encourage the volunteering within the office hours. That's how we don't ask them to go out on over weekends or spend times beyond their working hours. But if someone was willing to, we don't stop them from there. So that's how we do it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Kritika, there is a question that has been asked in the chat section. Do the monetary contributions during volunteering be a part of CSR spend? Like in an educational project for sponsoring student fees? Anu Anmol has asked us this question. Would anyone of you all would like to answer this?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the cost of a CSR program typically can be included under the CSR spend. Even if you don't include the employee volunteering portion, even though the employee volunteering part is actually part of the execution or the implementation of the program. However, there are many instances where even the cost is not included. So, for example, if you take HCL's Power of One program, where employees put in 1 rupee a day and also volunteer 1 hour, every month. The matching contribution, I mean, and it all goes towards scholarship programs. The neither is the employee giving portion, obviously, but in this case, even the company contribution is over and above their CSR budget. So this entire program of employee volunteering, the Power of One, even though technically, the matching part from the company or the cost associated with that program can be included at CSR spend. However, to be more conservative, etc., I mean, this is one example where even the matching contribution towards the scholarship is totally outside the ambit of CSR.
In fact, I would like to give an example where one of our plant locations, there is a competition of volunteering between one department and the other. So within the same plant, there are different teams. One is a blast furnace team, another one is coke oven team, etc., etc. And they kind of partner along with their spouses or family members, and they define what kind of a project they would like to take up. They put their own resources, time, etc. That's completely up to them. And amongst themselves, the plant management then decides, which one did the best job and who needs to be recognized for their effort. And obviously, there's a lot of facilitation done by the plant management also for that, but that rarely gets ever captured. Nobody looks at it from that lens, because as I said, it's more about the enrichment of lives of the employees. In terms of feeling so great about something that they could achieve as a team, as a family together, and which has also brought in some positivity in somebody else's lives. So I think it goes back to the same question in the beginning, that should it qualify as a CSR expenditure or not is not so important. I mean, if you ask me the total amount of expenditure that you do through volunteering activities, what percentage would it be of your total CSR budget? Maybe not even 1%, if you really capture it. So is that really such a big thing that we have to be discussing about whether it is going to qualify as a CSR expenditure or not?
I think, Ashwini, you have rightly captured what we wanted to answer from these questions. So, moving on, Vijaya, this question is directed towards you. Employee volunteering aside, can long term capacity building and mentoring by senior management be considered as CSR? Or is there any way to measure the impact of the same?
Well, I think, at Toolbox, since we've been running skilled volunteering only, and our flagship program is really pro bono management consulting through skilled volunteering. I believe that over the last 9.5 years that we've been working in this space, that there is a definite evidence that skilled structured volunteering can address capacity building requirements of organizations. Okay. And again, to deconstruct capacity building a little bit, it's, there's capacity building at an organization level, which is where uh, the so-called management consulting piece comes in. Then there's capacity building at a people level, at a community level, at a program level. But I also go back to what Ripunandan alluded to in the beginning. To undertake capacity building and to demonstrate the impact, and maybe even to consider it as, going above the CSR spends by any particular corporate, that will call for a certain amount of training, context setting, uh, and identifying those elements of capacity building that the volunteering is going to address. So I think if one is able to kind of link these up very effectively, it's possible to do that. Uh, we've seen mentoring again. A lot of it has already been said and covered. Ashwini spoke about how volunteering has been largely been to address the social consciousness, to demonstrate the social responsibility that organizations and its people are able to demonstrate and to undertake. And so we've seen mentoring where you've had senior management individuals who've been like sort of business coaches to nonprofit leaders. You've had HR managers who've done some sort of mentoring and coaching for, say, HR managers and nonprofits. And now increasingly, we see a lot of leveraging of corporate talent towards the employment readiness for the underserved adolescent youth groups. So I do believe that there is an excellent transference of experience, of learnings, and of skills. It's very important that we are able to structure it. We're able to tie in all the pieces and join the dots.
I think, Vijay, you have very rightly answered the question. Ashwini, Rohit, Ripudaman, would you like to add on to what Vijaya has said?
No, I think Vijay has very aptly put it, that capacity building and mentoring has always gone hand in hand. And I think somewhere, it's just not been captured in that sense, saying that this is something that we've done as a part of our volunteering experience or whatever. So, and I would say that, again, from the lens of volunteering, if I look at it, it's also about mentoring happening both ways. Learning from your partners and passing on your learnings to the partners. I think it's a two-way process. And so if volunteering derives value, it derives value not just for the partner institution, but also for the corporate. And I think if we can work on both the levels, I mean, if we try to capture it in both ways, I think then it would become much more enriching rather than as if, there's one giver and there's one taker. So this is
absolutely. I think Ashwini has just kind of brought that up, because I think in the earlier part of the discussion, there was a question around, how do you look at it from an HR perspective? I actually look at it more from a reverse learning perspective, which is one of the things we've been tracking. Have we been able to enable a lot of our volunteers to develop a lot of innovation and yet thinking and solution design when there is a constraint in resources?
true.
Have you been able to look at what kind of leadership at an individual level, and what are those other attributes that you've actually gleaned and developed through the volunteering experience?
Yeah, I just like to, add in with the GSK's example. So GlaxoSmithKline Beecham, I mean, very aptly sort of demonstrates exactly what Ashwini has been, has just mentioned. So they have a volunteering program called the Pulse program, which is actually to develop senior leaders. So it's a very prestigious volunteering program, which actually goes on for 3 months, and it is a crisscross across the globe. So there is actually an application process from GSK employees all over the world, and NGOs apply all over the world. And when there is this matching under the Pulse program, it is actually meant in the criteria to not only pass on the learnings to the NGO, but it is very prestigious for the people to get into this program, because these are the high performers and the future leaders who actually get the importance to be part of this program. And of course, they do not claim it under CSR. They talk about it as a corporate social responsibility program. So it might be under the CSR banner along with the employee engagement banner in the company, but under the rules per se, or if you look at it within the Indian perspective, they do not claim the expenditure as CSR.
See, Rohit, in fact, at a different in a different discussion, I think it's very important that while we may not like to capture it as an expenditure, but whether we capture it as an expenditure or not, but whether it is going to get captured as a contribution, I think is very important.
Absolutely.
Because the way I look at CSR laws in our country, they only look at CSR spending as another pot of money.
Paisa.
And I'm not shying away from saying it, or even on a public platform, that every single state government has come up with a CSR authority or advisory, and the central government keeps on saying that no, our rules don't permit all this, but yet it is all being being developed, and each one comes with their own different way of looking at CSR. So where you are looking at CSR from that lens, that it's another pot of money, I'm sure finer nuances like volunteering and people's contribution, I think the skill sets that people from the private sector kind of complement with the skill sets available in the voluntary sector, or say the public sector. I think that is where I think volunteering can make a big dent. Even if we don't capture it, it will actually make a big dent by telling the people that when you talk about any company, don't look at it as another dollar sign or a pot of money, but it's also a pot of expertise, and that expertise can be very well demonstrated through volunteering.
Agree. Absolutely. Very rightly put.
Very rightly. Moving on to the next question. Uh, Considering that CSR is recommended to take place in local communities, doesn't employee engagement necessarily lead to a local and a communal result? Ripudaman, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Aarti. So I think I would say, like I mentioned earlier, every organization has a very different framework of executing the CSR program and the employee volunteering program. But I think the question we should ask here is, are we actually measuring the impact of employee engagement volunteering as rigorously as we measure the CSR project's impact? Because I feel we do a lot of employee volunteering activities, a lot of organization, but the impact measurement is not done to the extent which is being done as a CSR project. So I'll give you an example from a previous organization. There used to be two separate teams. One was an employee volunteering team, and the other one is a CSR team. So under the employee volunteering team, there used to be a lot of employee volunteering opportunities which were created for the employees. And that program which was created for the employees was actually run and executed by the employees only. There was no the third party intervention was not there. It was all volunteers doing on their own with their own expertise. No doubt the impact they created was good, but we never claimed it into a CSR CSR project or CSR activity. Whereas a similar project which was executed by a CSR team, which was of course also in focus area of education, But here the intervention was done by a third party. The third party got on board, they trained the volunteers to go out and execute that project. And that's how they measure the impact of that volunteering in that particular project. So I think the whole idea or I think the question should be whether how rigorously we should measure the impact of the employee engagement. And it not necessarily every activity will lead to an impact. Like I mentioned earlier, few might be those one-off events or the fun activities which might not have that much of impact which we are expecting from a CSR project. But yeah, so this is, and in presently, like the law says that the organization need to focus on the areas around the organization where they're working or operating in. But I think a lot of organization has stepped out and they are actually trying to do projects or even they act volunteering activities beyond their operational areas. For example, for us also, though we are a real estate organization, it doesn't matter where our corporate office is, but we ensure that even if we are doing a project in somewhere in Kolkata, we totally sponsor the cause because we believe in the cause. So we don't necessarily see, okay, because our corporate office is only in Mumbai, we need to do something in and around Mumbai. We see where the need is actually, and we focuses on that particular area. So I think that thought process and that ideology has changed over a period of time, and a lot of organization, and in fact, because how that ideology was, as per my perspective, it started was because manufacturing plants were in and around the local areas and they were impacting the society. So that's how the manufacturing units and the plants started saying that, okay, let us come together and benefit the society. What we can do from where we actually taking so much of resources. So let's put something back to that society. So that's my point of view here.
Thank you. Sudaman. Vijaya, would you like to add on to this?
Yeah, just to adding on to what has already been covered by Ripudaman, I think that there is a lot of opportunity in local communities, right? Across plant locations, there is a need. I mean, I think what we see, I mean, by virtue of plant locations being where they are, far away from the from the urban landscape, you actually see new things emerging. Many times, a lot of it is being done. But I think the narrative is slightly different here. I mean, there is volunteering, and then there is CSR. Now, there will be points of convergence, and there's things which are going to run parallelly. During the COVID, we saw a bunch of migrants, painters who were actually trekking their way back to their villages, who actually were halted in a village on the way, and they actually painted the school walls. Now, what is the impact that you're going to actually, I mean, if you want to talk about, is it measurable impact? For me, it's meaningful impact, because they actually did something so very valuable with their time and with what they could. I think that is the grain of volunteering. And like it has already been said, everything that is done as part of volunteering need not be measured. We were all part of the task force for the India at 75 initiative, right? And it's running, and right from the time that Professor C.K. Prahlad said that if this is the capability of the trained demographic that India has, and you could actually put a monetized value. So I don't want to go into the history of all of that, but I think what all of us have a collective responsibility is to drive meaningful volunteering and meaningful impact. The measurability of it, we'll all anyway figure. What is it that we want to measure? The extent we want to measure. I remember working on the monetized value itself. And, I remember the earlier brand custodian, Dr. Mukund Rajan, chairing that committee where we said we came up with a Rajan calculator. What should be considered as a value to put on volunteering? Can you actually assign a sort of monetized value? And, one of my esteemed co-speakers has already alluded that there are a lot of organizations who are not really reporting that out. That value, I don't think, has any great purpose to it. I think what all of us are really looking at is meaningful impact, regardless of the kind of volunteering you do. That's my take on it.
Rightly said. Rohit, would you like to give your perspective, Ashwini?
Really, I have not much to add. I think the esteemed speakers have covered, most of what I wanted to say.
With my limited understanding, what I've observed is that uh, with employee volunteering happening around your plant area, whether it's a limitation or whether it's a strategy, it doesn't matter. The fact is that uh, you so-called white-collared job, people sitting in a plant boundary and sitting in a properly organized colony, township, going out, engaging with the community, realizing that just outside your boundary walls, what kind of hardships people are living in, and yet they are equal human beings like you. I think it brings in a lot of humility, and it creates that connect with the community. So I think from that perspective, it's very important that people do engage with the local communities, and that brings in that empathy, which I think is a very important virtue for any of those workers, as they grow up, or they perform more complex operations within that business where they are. So in terms of engagement with the local communities, I think it's very important, and I think that should be the essence of volunteering, if I may put it like that. At least for um, core sector companies like us, and one can always define, that what are your core communities to whom you would like to go and address. One of our business verticals is into only data processing. It provides business solutions to all the group companies. So for them, what they've done is that they've defined their communities as the locations or the localities where their employees are living. So their employees are their brand ambassadors. So around those communities, around those localities, they define a lot of volunteering activities as well as CSR activities, and that gives them that connect. That it kind of brings value to the organization also. It brings value to the communities by virtue of the things that are done there, and also it brings value to the people, that they're able to connect themselves better as a constituent of the society. uh, I think that's the way my take. I would like to look at volunteering in that sense.
Adi, could we please come in with a question here from one of our participants, Anu Anmol? What I've understood from the question typed into the chat box is around whether virtual volunteering, is something that corporates have been moving towards during lockdown, etc. And if it's beneficially related volunteering, are there any ways around which you can work around network issues and connectivity? I don't know if I've misunderstood the question, but feel free to jump in and clarify.
Kritika, I think your voice is not clear. Is it clear for everyone?
No,
No.
I missed the last part. I missed the
Yeah.
last part of her
So,
question.
yeah, the question is that how to organize volunteering during COVID times through virtual platforms. As in rural areas, they can be issues from beneficiaries and like network connectivity. Also, the hesitance of not knowing how to connect virtually. So
So
that's
I'm going to just take a stab at this very quickly, and then allow my other co-speakers to weigh in. So I think virtual volunteering is something that is here to stay in some shape or form, may not in its entirety. I know even before COVID 2 years ago, we went virtual with a lot of our volunteering, primarily because we couldn't physically reach organizations which were in the rural landscape, right? And I think for all of us who are intermediaries and running volunteering programs, going digital is imperative. COVID-19 just catalyzed that, okay? It catalyzed a lot of other things, including digital adoptions. Now, at a community level, and through our formats, multi-formats, where we've also been talking to nonprofits. Yes, I think there are some amount of bandwidth issues, but I think to dispel some of the typical stereotyping that we've also done, it is possible to engage in some form of volunteering. Okay, uh, and not all volunteering will be virtual. I mean, let's just look at what happened in the cities, right? I mean, even through COVID, even through lockdown, we had a huge number of civil society individuals, organizations, personal volunteering, where people were going and distributing food if required at the stations, on the Shramik trains. They were going to NSCI. They were at Bangalore Palace grounds. We've had people going into the underserved urban slums, even now, whether it's on menstrual hygiene, distribution of food, menstrual pads, and so on. So I think we're going to see blended versions, and I think this is really embracing technology uh, with the pluses and the minuses, and we will find. My thing is always start with one thing which we know we can deliver through, because it is a new medium, it is a new form of this thing. I mean, a lot of fellowships, social impact fellowships, are running virtually online. Of course, we don't have the touch and feel of the ground right now, but we are looking at blended models today.
Rightly said. Um, Ashwini, Rohit, Ripudaman, would you like to add on to this question?
No, I think Vijay has very nicely explained the blending of the virtual volunteering with the on-ground volunteering, and that's what we are going forward looking at. And she also rightly mentioned that virtual volunteering was there before COVID as well. From my past experience, I worked with TCS, and there used to be under Tata Sustainability Group, there used to be a program called Tata Engage, which was all completely virtual, and it's a long-term skill-based volunteering where there's a platform where you nominate yourself, you'll get the training online, you need to execute the project by sitting at home, and then deliver it and upload it on the portal itself. No doubt, it has its own challenges, like the one of the challenge which one of the participant has asked, that in the rural areas, how can we manage that? So I think we're still to explore, and we are on this journey, because this has actually, the COVID-19 has catalyzed this whole virtual piece, and then everybody is trying to figure out the best possible way to address that particular situation. So that's my take on this.
Um, I think, yeah, can you help? One more question that was asked by Shruti Bangera is, can you help me with one virtual volunteering opportunity that can have a huge scale and impact in a day or a week of volunteering?
So I think this is a question for you guys, for the ConnectFor team.
Yeah, of course. We do have a virtual volunteering program. Shruti, I will get back to you on this later.
If we can come in with one more question from Bhavya.
Yeah,
I think if my audio isn't clear, I'd suggest you just read it out.
yeah, I will do that. Um, she wants to understand through employee engagement is a very important, though employee engagement is very important for an organization, how important it is for organizations to have people who are from the development or social sector actually worked on the field to be a part of the office and CSR team, because I feel it can motivate the volunteers and will also enhance the CSR activity of the organization.
Well, I think it's fairly important. I think a development sector professional. I'm not one. Let me just put the biggest disclaimer out there. I'm not one. I came into the sector completely by accident. But I think what's wonderful is that they bring in a lot of understanding of ground challenges, right? And what you want for the volunteer, you need somebody who's able to translate that into a language, into a manner that the volunteer is able to understand. Okay, you go to a business head and tell him that this is an organization which needs, uh, you know, they need to have a better financial planning system in place. And for somebody who's used to looking at lakhs and crores on a balance sheet, he's going to look at it differently. You need to set context to it. And I think that kind of sensitization, that understanding of what is actually there on the ground, bringing it back to across employees in an organization is so beautifully done when you bring that. I don't see them as two separate worlds. We are now looking at CSR, employee volunteering, whatever we want to do is really the two halves that make up that coin, or that world. They're not two sides of, I mean, they're not like you flip the coin. It's just on the same coin, the two halves that blend beautifully. So I think it's essential. Over to all of you, please.
So I think I'll just give you the example of my own journey. I am qualified as a BTech. I'm an engineer by qualification, and I was campus based in TCS. And then I started my journey as a volunteer there. So I used to participate in a lot of activities, and I had this kind of bent towards helping others right from my college state. And then I thought, okay, this is something. Okay, there's something called CSR also, which exists in corporates, and that's how I landed here. So I'm saying that there is a lot of opportunities for people who actually want to, and they really can help others to develop. So I think there's some background noise.
Yeah. Yeah. I,
Okay. So which is saying, and then whatever I've learned, starting from it's all on ground with working with within this particular profile. And once I was kind of okay that I know what are the challenges, what are the practical implementations of this particular process. That was the time when after I think working for almost 2 or 2.5 years, I thought, let me just learn and go back and read what is the history of CSR, what is it saying. And it really helped me because I could relate, okay, this is how I practically implemented it, and this is what exactly the theory says. So I kind of blend in all my experience and while I was studying for my certification in CSR. So I think it's not necessary that you have to have that theoretical knowledge, but I think the practical knowledge also helps at a lot of time. It does. For me, of course, it does, but I'm not sure about how it will help for other people. But yeah, I should say that if you have to take a motivation from my journey, I think there's ample of opportunities where people can, pave their path on their own and can do what they actually want to do. So that's what I want to share.
I think you're like, from the people that I know of, a lot of them are not from the sector, like not done BSW or MSW, but I'm from a different background.
Yeah.
So
I'm a chartered accountant.
I started off my journey as a geoscientist and then moved into rural development and then moved into CSR after some years. So I think the advantage of working with volunteers who are not from the sector is that sometimes they don't take anything as obvious, and therefore they challenge that process. I'm not an MSW, and I'm surrounded by MSWs, so I keep on asking, like the layman, I keep on asking, but why do you do it like this? So this innocuous looking, very humble question, then triggers off a lot of minds, and then the solutions start pouring out. So I think the advantage of having volunteers who are not from the development sector has an advantage, because they are going to challenge the status quo. One of my first projects when I started working in the development space was in handlooms. I had never seen a village. Pakka urbanite, born and brought up in a city. I had never seen a loom. What is a loom? I just knew fabric. So, but as a process, as a part of your work, you have to go sit with them, understand them, learn from them, and also ask all these why questions. So why do you do it like this? Why is it so and so? Why is it so and so? And uh, I think it was a great learning experience for me, but I could also challenge a lot of things, the way they were doing it. And that triggered off a lot of, solutions coming from them only, which was the beauty of it. So I think from a I would say efficiency perspective, if developmental people go with developmental people, they would always say, okay, both of us know about it, so no big deal. But the moment you have an engineer going with an NSW, the engineer is going to ask some very, very critical process related questions, cost related questions on something which is being done. And maybe he would look at the ergonomics of it or whatever. I mean, there could be n number of ways in which this discussion and can be enriched. So it's a mutual learning process, in the sense and the empathy that gets passed on from the development professional to an engineer, for whom, and I think this is a struggle, this is not a struggle, I would say, but this is a point of discussion always, where when we sit in our CSR governing council across all plant locations, we always keep on telling them that, you know what, within the plant boundaries, your manufacturing process, every single parameter is under your SCADA control. Unfortunately, and I would say fortunately, in the outside world, nothing is SCADA controlled. Everything is so dynamic. What is discussed today in the morning would change by the afternoon. So, and therefore, you have to learn with so many, kind of challenges, or I would say, uncertainties, that it kind of hones you in a very different way altogether. And that's how the project delivery in a typical CSR or a developmental program would be so different the way you would deliver a project within the plant boundaries. Not saying that there are no challenges there, but the parameters are very much within your control. So I think it's a mutual learning process in that sense.
I think Bhavya, your answer has been your question has been answered rightly. Rohit, there's this one question that has been asked by Srirang Wagmare. Is there any section in the Act which is related to employee volunteering? Is there any? Oh,
No, no. So there's nothing. There was in 2014. It got removed, and so now there's really nothing which
They just want you to spend money.
there's nothing in the act.
okay. All right. Moving on. The last question on our agenda today is if employee engagement was considered as CSR, can volunteering be done by the volunteer on their own be counted as volunteering hours by a corporate?
So I can answer this question from my heart and my mind. So if I answer from my mind, I would say no, because technically speaking, employees should go with what the corporate has structured for them. And also because, like Ashwini said, it's important for corporates to be able to capture it. I mean, if not under CSR, it's important to capture the hours spent, etc. And in a way, if that is done in an ad hoc manner, it would not really be possible to actually uh, capture it. Uh, there are many corporates who encourage employees to come together and support whatever causes they want to support. So, for example, I know Adobe has this very beautiful program where employees decide which cause they want to, volunteer both their time and money, and then they choose the NGOs that they want to do, but it is still structured through the company portal, etc. However, if I would really talk about a personal choice, keeping CSR aside, I think volunteering is volunteering, whether it is personally or through the company, etc. It gives you the same experience, the same set of motivations, and personally, a lot of times, again, I'm saying this on a public forum, but a lot of times, say a CSR day or etc.
Hello,
uh,
Rohit.
gets attached to more of branding and more of the senior leadership being there. So in a sense, it loses the passion. It becomes like another event and another bandwagon to be seen as doing. And I personally don't like to be part of those. I personally like to do it very quietly in my own time. So I've answered the question both with what it technically should be, from my mind and through the structure, etc. But I've also given you my personal choice, and what typically sometimes happens in corporates when there is spontaneous, not long-term structured volunteering, but some of these days, etc. It tends to become cosmetic, and it tends to become people volunteering for the sake of volunteering because there are senior leadership, who are there during that event, etc. So that's something which I feel defeats the purpose.
Ashwini, Vipudhaman, Vijaya, any your perspective on this?
I have a different take on this, and I would I would go with what to some extent I'll go with what Rohit just said. See, when you volunteer at an individual level, uh, to me it's more about personal philanthropy, if I may put it like that. Philanthropy doesn't mean that I just give money or sign off a check. It could also be in kind, by the time that I put in or whatever other effort I put in. So we should not be mixing up personal commitment towards social responsibility, and individual's social responsibility with the social responsibility that is supposed to be demonstrated by an entity, and a corporate entity or whatever. My answer or my observation may seem a little esoteric, but my feeling is that individual or personal level philanthropy, volunteering, whatever word I want to put it, is something which I am supposed to do as an element of this society, and therefore we should not take it off from the individual and turn it into more of a corporate affair, because then it takes the whole society into a very very different direction altogether. And we see that quite prominently today in our society, that whatever is personal is closely guarded, and whatever is not personal, which is social or communal or state or national level kind of a thing, that is something which I'm not bothered about. So my responsibility is only for me, or at best for my immediate kith and kin. So I think if we turn volunteering also into a kind of a situation where it is more about uh, buying off an individual's ability to contribute to the society as a corporate entity, I think it is going to create some serious challenges.
That's right. Vijaya, Ripudaman, any your perspective?
Well, I think, I think a lot has been already said, right? I think, again, I think, I firmly believe that volunteering, at an individual level, at a corporate level, a toolbox, we get like hundreds of volunteers. We have about 300 volunteers on projects through the course of a year, and a lot of these are not formal corporate engagements. Okay, there are a lot of people who are coming to us. Even now, we have so many undeployed volunteers. Okay, what is this telling us? There is a rise in the kind of social consciousness. People genuinely want to do something. What has the pandemic done? The pandemic has also brought in a certain amount of monotony and boredom into our lives because of the lack of anything else to do. So people are like, let me channelize that into doing something if I can put my time to good use. And so I'd like to go with that philosophy. I think a lot of CSR programs and activities are designed well, they're structured well, there are thrust areas. There's so much happening on that. And so I believe that there'll be points where, like I said before, they will kind of converge at some point. But for the most part, I think volunteering should truly be embraced and imbibed in the spirit of what it was. And I think there are organizations who are being flexible, saying that, hey, you know what, do it during our work hours, which is what Ripudaman alluded to. They are facilitating those on plant locations. They are saying that, okay, you want to go beyond the thrust areas of what our organization is doing, please do it. We'll broadcast, we'll promote, we'll evangelize that. So I come from that space where I definitely believe that across the world we've seen that volunteering in different shapes and form is a very valuable activity that society delivers. Now, what is the value that it's delivering? Uh, Again, is a separate beast in itself. Do you want to get into the measurement conundrum? I would therefore just go back to saying that as long as it's meaningful, as long as we know we are able to make a difference, and we are also definitely gaining something in the process, we should just make it happen. That's it. Keeping in the context that everybody has work responsibilities. there are business compulsions. It doesn't take away from that. It's just adding on a layer. If somebody said, that we all need personas beyond our work personas, volunteering gives you one of those personas apart from your personal hobbies and passions and talent. That's how I would sum it up.
Yeah, totally agreed. Um, we will now open to questions. Uh, to begin with, there was one question that was asked by our participants, that what is the impact of the on the CSR ecosystem due to the social stock exchange introduction? I know this is a long conversation for on the social stock exchange, but Rohit, Ashwini, would you all like to begin with this question? Would you like to answer it?
Honestly, it's not something which I have delved quite deeply into. So I'll let Ashwini see if we can throw some light on it. It doesn't have any correlation to the the topic on hand. So I don't know whether we should have a discussion around it, or probably sort of defer it, because it's got nothing to do with the topic that we discussed.
Yeah, it's completely a little unrelated to the discussion topic that we have today. Second, I think it's when I look at it, um, it's again the same thought process, which is kind of manifested here also. That in a very loose, crude sense, I'm saying that you can buy off carbon credits, something of that sort. So therefore, I think it's just a thought process which has started coming into the, I would say, the discussion. It's too early to comment anything on that at this moment. It needs to be understood well, in more detail, and then only I think it looks a very fancy idea at this moment, I can tell you.
Yeah,
But
quite.
I would say
Also there's a it has a mix of social impact and pure play NGO aspects.
correct.
So again, I mean, I agree. I mean, I've not been able to, get my arms around it. I don't think there's enough proof of concept, etc.
It's
To
a
be able
it's
to
a very
have a view.
Rohit, to me it's a very incipient idea at this moment. It's at a very incipient stage at this moment.
Sure.
See, even in impact investing, I'll tell you, I'm just giving you an internal thing. Foundation is looking, JSW Foundation is very keenly looking at a lot of impact investing opportunities. That's another area that we're trying to get into. So one of my questions to these organizations with whom we are discussing, they were wanting us to come as an outcome investor, outcome funder. So to me, the ethical dilemma was that if I'm not putting my money as a risk investor, if I'm only putting my money as an outcome funder, then am I simply buying off the impact generated by somebody else? By
Right.
the risk, the appetite that has been demonstrated by somebody else? So am I simply just buying it off and saying, okay, this is the final, tranche of money from my side because you've been able to win the race, therefore I give you this gold medal in that sense, in a very crude sense? Or whether it is actually an important element of the entire process because of which I can feel comfortable by claiming it that this has happened because of my contribution, whatever it is, as an outcome funder. So I think from a social or this uh, social exchange and all this that we're talking of, I think it's at a very nascent stage, to be discussed. I think
Even with the performance bonds, as you're mentioning,
yeah,
I again, there are reservations around. I mean, there's money, but other than money, I'm
so I'm
not
very
too sure.
candidly sharing with you. This
I'm
was
not
my
too
thought
sure.
process. I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
am I simply buying off somebody's work and trying to put a claim over that, or am I really contributing something significant to that?
Right.
So we got into a lot of discussions around that, and I said we need to understand it better. Whether we are really contributing something significant to that, for which we should be taking taking the credit and feel proud of it, or are we simply trying to buy off somebody else's achievement? So to that extent, it's important for us to first understand this a little bit more and then talk about it. It looks a very fancy idea at this moment.
So I think I'm going to just add to what Rohit already said. I think right now it's a draft committee report which has just come out. Comments are still being solicited.
Yeah.
I think what they do definitely want to do is, I think the two things or three things that we do understand is that the possibility to explore innovation in the funding instrument itself is being is a larger rationale behind it. Uh, they definitely want to bring in some sort of structure into it. How it's going to pan out, who's going to benefit, how is it? Like I said, it's right now, it's just the draft report which has come out. So there are parts of it which are still a little bit fuzzy, which will slowly open up in the coming months.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, speakers, for your insight. Thank you, everyone, for joining the session. We would now request you all to please fill in the feedback form that's there in the chat section. Also, you all can reach out to us to assist your organization in creating a virtual ecosystem where we all can come together with different NGOs to address ground realities of these organizations, map out how to cater to their needs by creating programs to best leverage your employee skills. As I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions that remain unanswered in this session, please put them in the feedback form, and we will get our panelists to answer these questions offline. I hope to see you all in our next session soon. We will also be having a meet and greet with all our corporate partners. So you all can feel free to be a part of that, where we will be answering your volunteer-based questions. Um, I We will be sharing details of the same on the email as well as the WhatsApp group. Thank you once again for the great work you all have been doing, and and have a nice evening. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
Thank,
you.
Aarti.
Thanks,
pleasure.
everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you so
Bye.
much and pleasure meeting you. Thank you so
Bye.
Same
much.
here. Same
Thanks.
here.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.